On July 2nd, the South Canyon fire was ignited by lightning at about 6:30 in the evening. The South Canyon fire was located in central Colorado, about 7 miles west of Glenwood Springs. On July 6th, the day of the tragedy, another red flag warning was issued, but this one was for a cold front moving through that would have high winds with it. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the fire blew up. Between 4:14 and 4:18 p.m., the fire spotted back to the east side of the drainage, direct below the retreating firefighters. The fire overtook Kathy Beck, Tammy Bickett, Scott Blecka, Levi Brinkley, Doug Dunbar, Terry Hagan, Bonnie Holtby, Rob Johnson, John Kelso, Don Mackey, Roger Roth, and James Thrash. Richard Tyler and Robert Browning had been directing helicopter operations from Helispot 2. Flanked by fire, Tyler and Browning headed in that direction. In 150 to 200 yards, a steep rocky chute, 50 feet deep, blocked their escape. They tried to cross the chute, but died when they were overcome by fire in that chute. Of the 49 people on the fire line, 35 escaped and 14 perished. The fire went on to burn all of Storm King Mountain that day.
You can see the smoke and flames coming, and every once in a while you could get a good view across the canyon and I could see the fire had been moving along, and it was, on both sides coming at us. I had only one thing in my mind, and thank God it was the right thing, was I'm not stopping, I'm getting the hell out of here. Go, go, go. That's all that was in my mind. It was just dumb luck. It ended up being the right thing. If I'd been 5 seconds slower in one of their estimates, I would have, the fire would have got me. It would have fried my lungs. I wouldn't have made it.
We had drought conditions for that entire year and for a year or so before. And so what that does is just makes these fuels, this Gamble's oak that's there, all the grasses, very, very dry, and much more capable of having fires started, and much more capable of having fires grow fast. There was an old cold front. Cold fronts sometimes stall, and there was one stalled up in southern Idaho and across Montana. We know fuels are dry. We know that it's the middle of the summer, and they've been drying out for a month or two. They're ready to burn. And all we're waiting for is the spark from lightning. In this case, it started from a thunderstorm on July 2nd. And the winds to pick it up and make a fire run. What basically happened is this fire slowly grew downhill, and the crew was trying to cut a line underneath it and stop it from getting to the highway and stop it from going over this ridge to Canyon Creek subdivision over here. I saw the danger that this front would take, those 40, 50 to 100 fires that started on July 2nd all across western Colorado, and make some of them grow very big, very fast. Late that night, the night before, it was more like 7 o'clock that night, I upgraded that fire weather watch to a red flag warning.
Late morning is when we started digging line off the ridge. The fire had started up on top, and it was kind of mostly in this west drainage and kind of up against the ridge top. We're flying around. When we were flying around, it was just like, this is not an initial attack. In my mind, initial attack is getting the fire while it's small, not. It obviously been burning for quite some time. Well, it's just these little tiny, half-foot flame lengths, and it's just burning in the twigs and leaves under the brush. The brush was, the oak brush was just this lush green, really deceptive. Wasn't even scorching the trunks of the bark of the oak brush. Okay, we'll put in a line and we'll get off this thing. As we started getting down there, and we got about 200 feet down, and then the brush was kind of going, from, waist high to head high to 10 to 12 feet high in places. The spider sense started tingling. You're just kind of going, this isn't good. And I distinctly remember Jim Thrash saying, this isn't a good idea. We shouldn't be here. Don Mackey would walk by, who was in charge of our section, the west flank. And, we just didn't go, hey, Don, we shouldn't be here. That sort of, we weren't. It's that fine line between, bringing up concerns and being a whiner. Yeah, so we ended up digging line all the way across the west flank. You brush it out about 10 feet wide, and right down the middle of it, you dig a trail. So the fire creeps up the trail and stops. Unbeknownst to us, it was all the way down to the bottom. We didn't know. We couldn't even see the bottom. And that was the problem with that oak brush as you're digging along there, is we just had limited awareness. We're just kind of digging in this corridor.
Somewhere around 3 o'clock, Dick Good, the pilot, said he saw a spot fire start down here. What is believed is that a burning ember rolled downhill and started a fire at the base of this canyon. If you're building line uphill, that you watch out for exactly that happening at the base of a canyon, because that has caught firefighters before. And so you've got to plant a lookout in a spot that can see right there and have radio contact with whoever's on the hill. And of course they didn't have a lookout there. And when the front came through and the winds dramatically increased to 30 to 45 miles an hour, took that fire and it ran up that hill. Yeah, and the poor guys working down this line, they were in that 8 and 10 foot tall, Gamble's oak, and they couldn't feel the wind even. People up this hill, they could feel that wind, but they had maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes to react and tell the guys down here to do the right thing at the right time.
There was zero wind down there to speak of. You couldn't tell that down where we were. There was just nothing. Remember just turning around, and from behind us, back towards the, back towards the lunch spot ridge, this big column is formed.
And so what happened is everything came in alignment. That's the term they use. The slope, the fuels, and the wind direction all aligned up that slope. It's just a perfect setup for a fire to go from here to there in just a couple of minutes to go that fast. Something no human being can ever outrun.
We're going as fast as you could go in a group like that, tripping along a freshly cut fire line. There's still stobs, roots and rocks and all that. And I remember every time I kind of have these snapshot memories of, you get a snapshot view, and every time I looked again, it moved so much faster than what I had estimated in my head. I was surprised every time. I was like, I can't believe it's moving that fast at us. I've never been on a fire that moved that fast. Could see the fire just whipping and curling on the other side of the canyon, both sides just coming, this wall of smoke and flame coming at us. I was 3 people back, and right in front of me, Thrash stepped off this side, breathing so hard you couldn't say hard. There wasn't any wind for discussion. He just goes, "Shelter," and Roth stepped off to the other side. They weren't going quite as fast as I wanted to go, and they moved off, and then I just went right through. I'd gone 100 feet from when I passed those guys, but they were 50 feet behind me at that point. I was looking right into Roth's eyes, and it's another image I'll never forget. Looking right at him, and he is really concerned. And that's the last time I saw anybody. So that final 300 feet, it gets steep enough at that point that you almost want to use your hands. It started getting hotter and hotter. It's deep red, and it's just getting unbearably hot. This is kind of like this last-ditch effort in my mind to just get away from it. So I dove away from it. So it really felt like I just got just splatted to the ground, just thrown to the ground. Because when I got back up, I was running over the top, and the waist belt I was just waddling because the waist belt was holding my pack on, and I punched it loose. I believe maybe that's when the first time I saw my hands and saw that the skin was hanging off my hands. So I was kind of tripping and falling and running more, just 10-foot strides, bound all the way down. When I got to the hospital, I was going, man, there's going to be a lot more people coming in that are going to be worse off than me. I found out about it in the middle of the night when I woke up from the debridement. Bill Baker from the Hot Shots, from the Prineville Hot Shots was there, and he's going, do you know what happened to what happened with the crew, the Prineville crew you're with? And I was going, oh, they all made it. He's going, no, they didn't make it.
All this was predicted the day before. They didn't have the weather prediction. None of them got the weather prediction. That's the problem. They didn't even go try. It was frustrating and painful. It was to know that something that I had really worked hard to get right and to get out to other people. And then to have it just lost somewhere or just not be communicated by whatever means it was. Frustration, still gets to me.
I was actually on a day off at home. Went to work, and that's when they said everybody's missing, so we knew something was up. So yeah, we were just kind of waiting, and then they told us, so. Then I had to go tell my mom, which kind of made me mad because I figured they'd send a representative or something, but they made me go, which is pretty tough. My brother, they got flown in, but this is the path that the folks that first got here walked.
I'm a survivor too, and I rehashed this thing over and over and over, ad nauseum. It's gotten better for me, but yeah, it was really hard for those of us involved in it. I think a lot of things, these small units think this stuff can't happen to them, and I think, we're proof that it can happen to anybody. And it's definitely the human factors are a huge part of what's going on out there when we have mishaps. This profession, it is it's can-do, the whole can-do attitude thing. It's, a lot of hard-charging people. It's type A personalities. So self-reflection isn't a big part of our culture. So we try to use mindfulness out there, try to ask people, if nothing else.
Have you ever seen a crew working a line? Yeah. They are working their butts off, and their heads are down, and they're doing this. Somebody has to be up here saying, okay, is this safe for my crew?
That's Gamble's oak, yeah. So this stuff will look green like this, but it's actually ready to burn. That time of the year it would look green, but it was flash frozen because it had leafed out and then froze. So that's why it looked like it was still alive.
There's a lot of fuel out there. And for 30, 40, 50 years, we didn't let that fuel burn. Well, now it's burning, and now it's very thick and very dangerous in many places.
Clearly things are changing with, you'd have to have your head in the sand not to recognize that. In my career, which is a short time frame, when you look at the scale of an ecosystem, I've just seen incredible changes in what's going on, and changes in forest health, changes in fire behavior, and changes in climate and weather. We did not used to get 108-degree days and howling winds at the same time. Nobody's experienced stuff like that.
So it was just, oh yeah, that's how close he was. I guess that was when the first time I ever came around, what struck me is just how close everybody was. And it looks a lot different now with all the brush, but then, you know, it was just like, I mean, it's just like, that tree right there is the top, you know? That's what you put the Jägermeister in right there. It's still here. I always thought these are kind of hokey, these dream catchers. So I think we've made sure there's always one on here.
Yeah.
They didn't lie to me. They were here.
Yeah. Who's it? Oh, BLM?
Yeah, my Twin Falls guys. I think his next, after probably the summer that he died,
Yeah.
he was going to try to become a smoke jumper, I think. I'm also so sure he wouldn't have been I think he wanted to write he's one of those guys that kind of wanted to write his memoirs, thinking that's how he's going to make his millions. He was the guy that kind of did everything first, you know? Like he jumped or whatever. Parachuted. He was the first one. I think he would have been the guy that saw the world over all of us, you know? Traveled around and that kind of stuff. So, but I think that's how a lot of these guys were here. You know, adventure. 22 years old, you know. What better way to see the United States? Getting paid, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Well, should we break out the Jaeger? Okay, you guys ready?
All right.
Just Levi. Levi.
Levi.
Yeah.
I don't know why I like that stuff. Why couldn't it have been a good bourbon or something?
Yeah.
See you, babe.
And we're left to talk about it now because it still seems to be happening. You know, and it's usually the smaller fires, the ones that really don't look that bad yet. They're growing, but they don't look that bad, and it's in transition to something big. And you hope the training will improve so that there'll be more people out there that can step back and see when it's changing. Right now, there are, you know, because even though this happens, it happens every year that hundreds of times crews pull off a fire and say, we can't be here at 2 in the afternoon, you know. And we're going to do what we can, and then we're going to get out of the way. And, you know, it's, that decision's being made more from what I understand. Several times every day, you know, do my strategy and tactics hold up to what's happening now? Are they going to hold up to what's happening at 3:30 in the afternoon when just about everything bad happens? You know, does it hold up to the current weather? Will it hold up in the predicted weather and the predicted fire behavior from that weather? You look at every fatality fire. That's the key question. When weather was one of the causal factors.
Our promise to the families and the brave men and women who died in the South Canyon fire is that we will work together to do everything we can to prevent this sort of tragedy from ever occurring again and to protect firefighters in the future.
Well, you've all made it to the site where 19 Granite Mountain hotshots died on June 30th. This is exactly the ground that they died on. You know, they were doing their job that they were assigned to do in one of the basic tenets of wildland firefighting is anchoring the fire. There were structure protection groups that were in place in Yarnell, Model Creek, the Double Bar A Ranch, doing structure protection work. They hiked in, got up on top of the mountain, and were doing their work at all day long. And if you look above me, you'll see a 2-track road that leads out pretty much to the ridge line further north, and that's where they were at the time. And then the fire behavior began to pick up that day, and this area that we're standing in right now was all green at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was 10-foot chaparral, very volatile fuel. They saw that the fire activity was picking up, and it had turned a little bit, and there was a line of fire from the ridge top beyond where they were down lower into the valley, probably a mile or 2 mile and a half line of fire in its chaparral that started to move to the south. They realized that the fire had changed direction, the wind was picking up out of the north, and when they moved back into that saddle, they saw the town of Yarnell that was unprotected. When they got over the saddle and they got below this ridge line of rocks here, the fire is totally blocked from their view. They can't see the fire over in that point, so they've committed to go downhill at this point. At that point, that's when things started to change dynamically with the weather. You know, we had some tremendous outflows, and basically on some fire behavior stuff that we've looked at, the fire was able to come around here and in this drainage and moved up this way. They probably saw the fire in this area, and then were looking for a place because they knew that they had fire on both sides of them. They had fire behind them, and now they have fire ahead of them. They started cutting out a safety zone with their saws, and at about 4:45, somewhere in that range, the fire was moving up to them. My understanding, the last radio transmission was that they were going to burn out around them, and what that means is they were going to light a backfire around the circle that they had cut out for their safety zone, and then they deployed their shelters. We lost contact with them at that point in time.
Well, when I first heard about it, the only thing that I was told that I was told to go to the communications center because there's been a situation down at the Yarnell Fire and that a crew deployed. And I thought, oh gosh, I hope it was Granite Mountain, because my thought was, initially I thought, and if they deployed, Eric's going to be so mad because he's going to have to do all this paperwork and take him off the fire and so on and so forth. And then I heard, no, they actually deployed, and I was like, oh crap, you know, some of these guys are probably hurt pretty bad. It took me forever to be able to go there. I couldn't believe it. I think the reason for me not believing that, just my experience with them and knowing that they would have never put themselves in the position to be there, you know, unless it was a total accident. At best, there was a 2-minute period where they thought they were in deep trouble.
Yeah.
And I think it was less than that they knew that it was worse than that. I don't think they knew.
Through a friend that was watching TV, called me, said there was a problem. Come to town. My ex-wife found out through Facebook. And then we were officially notified. That was like at 6, and we were officially notified, I think, about 9 or 10 o'clock. So Travis was like third generation, both welder, fabricator, or metal fabrication, and fireman, because of just kind of the way the things have turned out. So he's been around it his whole life. When he was in kindergarten, he drew a picture that looks a lot like a hotshot buggy, as it turned out. He wanted to be a fireman to go fight the fires. Yeah, Travis was, he was raised to be a very independent and strong-minded thinker. He was a very strong-willed individual and hard-headed and stubborn like his dad, so him and I butted heads a lot. Him and I hadn't spoke much up until this last spring. Over the last 4 years, Jesse Steed brought us kind of back together, was rekindling the relationship. It's been a very challenging time. The problem is for me is that I will never get Travis back. He's never going to come home. So he only resides in my heart.
around behind this one on another one. It's like styrofoam. I think there are things that have unfortunately probably been learned on other fires. But it takes something like this to open everybody's eyes and start to implement it. I think there's one lesson learned from this that you can take from the structure side, and that's doesn't cost a thing and really easy to do. In structure side, we do PAR checks, where you actually just pause for a second and said, do you have a PAR on your crew? Where are you? So every 5 minutes they'll ask for it. The IC will ask for a PAR check. And maybe it's something that we can integrate into wildfires, where the division supervisors can do a PAR check and find out exactly where people are. So there's a time check. So every half hour, something like that. And like I said, I think that's already done through the communications and knowing, where people are based on the communication that they're having and what they're doing and what their objective was and so on and so forth. But I think if you mentally made it stop and took awareness of it, that would help. I don't think they had any intention of deploying when they went down from here.
No, yeah. Is this the, how many times have you been back to the area?
Too many. I think it's my last.
I'm not satisfied with the answers of their death. It doesn't satisfy me that God needed a hotshot crew in heaven. I'm not satisfied with we will never know the answers because all 19 died. They left the answers on the mountain. I look at this report and the fact that the equipment failure, the total letdown on failure, not being the first and foremost part of their finding, absolutely absurd. I've had wildland firefighters say that fire shelters should never be deployed. Well, you're right. They should never be deployed because they're not worth carrying. I started thinking about it within 2 weeks of the tragedy. It's just one of a few materials that, it's the first material that I've acquired and done testing. I know that it would have made a significant difference had their shelters been made of materials like this. The current shelters are designed basically a one-time use. In other words, you never unpack them. They train in a canvas bag and then they never deploy them until they're needed. Okay? So I'm looking at trying to create something or encourage somebody, whether it be myself or some other person or some other company, to create a shelter that would be that they would use on a daily basis and have the ability to be used as a fire shelter for the last case resort. This shelter is a result of Storm King Mountain. Jim Roth's brother perished on Storm King Mountain I didn't even realize, 1994. It's damn near 20 years. And my contention is, are we going to wait another 20 years? I want to help facilitate a national conversation about how we deal with wildland firefighting in the future, both from a safety equipment side and a response conversation.
some point, I think it becomes counterproductive to look at it for the sake of trying to prove somebody wrong or prove somebody right. At some point, you got to let go and realize that we call them accidents because they're accidents. Yeah. Nobody intended or thought or wished upon or even wildly imagined that this was going to happen. The reality is that it's going to continue to happen. The fires are getting hotter. The fuel models are changing. The situational awareness has to be even at a higher level than it's ever been. I think those are all things that we'll learn from this. I was asked recently, they kept pushing me, what is the biggest lesson learned in this event? And I said, the biggest lesson learned for me is the reality of it is, the reality is that our jobs are dangerous and you can die. When you leave home in the morning, it might be the last time you... I think that's the biggest lesson learned for us. You don't think about that. How could you do your job if you're thinking about that? How could you get out of bed in the morning? The possibility is there always. I think oftentimes we look at it as a probability and not a possibility. The probability of walking out in that parking lot and getting killed right now is probably mathematically pretty high. I mean, it's not going to happen, but is it possible? Yeah, it's very possible. The possibilities all added up on that day.
We think of the friends and colleagues of the fallen men and women who lay awake at night wondering, what more could I have done? How else could I have helped? We ask ourselves the same question. What can we as public servants do to improve safety, training, and management? What else can we do to save lives? How can we move our agencies to make sure this never happens again?